Greetings, groovy people. Welcome to this Wednesday's video. Blues for Kanna. Blues for Kanna. I'm really pushing the envelope a little this week. If it wasn't obvious, I know I've mentioned it a few times before, but I am a massive Beatle fan, and I'm probably going to do a little bit of a video on that at some point, discussing how it influenced Dark Horse. But I'm also a bit of a deadhead, so this title is very loosely inspired by their album Blues for Allah, which is why I pronounce Kanna so weird. Nothing at all connecting these two except for the color blue, and except perhaps, let's pretend there's more symbolism in it. People have nearly deified Kanna, so there's the connection. That is not at all what I had in mind when I came up with this title, but whatever. I'm getting over a cold. I'm sorry if I sound a little out of breath or tired. I'm not still sick. I just sound awful, so apologies for that. As promised, this week I'm focusing on Karin Blu from my free, not safe for work webcomic Dark Horse. The links for that are down in the description. Because I didn't get any questions from my $10 level patrons, I've already had the discussion with them that if they don't have any questions, then it's okay for me to just do a video on whatever I want. And so this week, I wanted to talk about Karin. As with all of my characters, just about all my characters, Karin is extremely loosely based on someone who is a friend. When I say extremely loosely based, the only thing they have in common is the name, which I've changed the spelling, where they were born, not even the location, just the city. And I think she might have had like the same major, but really, every single thing you're going to hear about this character has absolutely nothing to do with that person I knew. Kanna, even, is based on one of my best friends growing up. There's a plant for my mom in here somewhere. Just about everyone that I know, I have somebody that is not them, but was inspired by them. And so that's the case with this character, too. So all the information that I'm going to talk about, where she's from, and what her family's background is, has nothing to do with this person. But I was inspired to include her in the comic because I like to have my friends in here because they're the ones who supported me as I was working on this, you know? So it's my little nod to them without actually having them in here. The characters are all their own people, if that makes sense. Okay, disclaimers aside, I've put a lot of work into Karin's backstory. She was born on the north side of Chicago. She's the daughter of a successful lawyer. Her mother was a stay-at-home mother, but she was a big part of the community. She always was doing things through her church to help the community at large, the black community at large in Chicago. Both of her parents came from successful business families. And her paternal and maternal grandparents were part of what's known as Chicago's quote-unquote black old settlers, who were successful businessmen and women, and yeah, there were actually some women, who took it upon themselves to try to help some of the migrants who had come up north from the deep south as part of the Great Migration, which took place over a span of many decades. Her family has a very proud background of helping the community and being successful in their community and their neighborhood. And so a lot of weight and pressure has been put on Karin as the oldest daughter of this family with quite a deep and important background for Chicago. A lot of pressure has been put on her to be successful, much like her heritage. So Karin, who was born in 1980, was actually part of accelerated college classes when she was in high school. So she's 4 years older than Kanna, but at the age of 19, she was nearly completing her degree with Northwestern University, which is located in Evanston, Illinois. She was only, we'll say, a semester away from achieving her degree in criminal justice. That's what she had chosen to major in. And had the outbreak and the war not happened, she would have moved on to getting her graduate degree as well, probably at Northwestern. She was part of the Black Student Union while she was there, one of the youngest members, the BSU. She loses both of her parents after the outbreak, and because she was boarding at Northwestern in the dormitories, she loses track of her younger brother during the war. And so she went out west in hopes that he would realize and recognize that she probably, you know, if they got separated, would go out west as part of the pilgrimage. But also, she went out there so that she could make a name for herself, and since she couldn't find him, perhaps if she was able to build enough recognition for herself within the government, he would be able to find her. Karin is, generally speaking, a word of Wednesday, solemn type of person. Not for want of being young at heart, I mean, she is only 19, but having been the eldest in a long line of successful business people, her father, her grandparents, everyone has set her to a higher standard than even her brother, because she is the eldest. And he was held to a high standard as well. But she feels that there's been this heavy weight placed upon her shoulders, and, you know, she always felt like she had to be better than, you know, just being a young kid or being a teenager. She had to grow up quicker than some of her peers and not have that same freedom that her friends did. But she's, you know, as a result of this, always felt like she had the eyes of the world, her parents, her grandparents, the world at large, watching and waiting for her either to succeed, wanting her to succeed, or waiting and wanting for her to trip up and fail. So she's always had this pressure, that's the word I'm looking for, she's always had this pressure put upon her to be the best that she can be, much like everyone, but I would feel like the pressure from her lineage and her heritage is greater than, say, someone like Kanna or Rena, who, well, especially Rena, since her parents really just wanted her to be herself. Kanna's parents would have expected more of Kanna, so I would say that the pressure put on Karin would have been greater than even that which was placed on Kanna. So she always tried before the war to be very serious and stoic and try her best to achieve the standards set for her by her family. And as a result of this, she's always been a little more responsible than others of her age, and as a result, more responsible than the majority of the recruits to the U.S.S.O, the United Sovereign States of Orgonia. Kanna recognizes this. Kanna's a fairly good read of people, and so she pairs Rena with Karin quite often. Next to Rena, Karin is Kanna's personal preference for highest in command. Now, there are some other strings behind Kanna that are against her choice, but if Kanna was given her choice, Karin and Rena are pretty much the highest in command. But she pairs Rena with Karin in hopes that some of Ren's free-spiritedness, if that's a word, will rub off on Karin, and some of Karin's responsibility will rub off on Rena. But to be fair, Karin, she may be a bit hard on Ren, especially since so much responsibility has been placed on her shoulders, but when they're on duty, the two of them are actually pretty close friends. I mean, Karin hangs out with all the group, which would consist of Kanna, Rena, Karin, soon to be Odysseus, Renshaw, Rowan, and Rowena. Those are kind of the teenagers that kind of pal around and are not part of the older government officials that are kind of pulling the strings on Kanna. But yeah, Rena and Karin spend a lot of time together, and whenever she's off duty, they will sometimes pore over Ren's manga collection, many of which are fan translations, because, you know, the big manga pouring into the US really didn't get hot and heavy until the early 2000s, so Karin's been put in charge of education and research, but as she mentions in Act 4 to Odysseus, her background is in criminal justice, so she's lacking in the science and math department. I mean, it's not that she can't do it, it's just not her specialty. So Odysseus has a mind for biology and an interest in biology, and has been carrying a few of his old school textbooks along with a copy of A Raw Youth by Dostoevsky. I think I said that right. It's your turn to have your language butchered, Russia. Sorry, I butcher everyone's language, including my own. But that's why it was suggested to her that he be recruited to help out with the research division. That was what kind of perked her interest when she was told what was in his backpacks that he had been carrying. So that kind of catches us up on Karin. Again, I'm sorry I sound awful. Question of the week: what was your favorite subject in school? References for Karin's background are in the description. Much of this history came from the hard work of my good friend Marcos Reynolds. I'm not sure how you can get a hold of his text, but he did his thesis on the Great Migration, and he did his dissertation on wage garnishment and predatory debt collectors in Chicago during the 1950s and 1970s. If you like these videos and want to support the channel, Patreon, Ko-fi, Coffee, all that's in the description. Otherwise, I'm always happy for likes, new subscribers, people doing the bell thing, that's all good. Peace and love, fare you well, and keep on trucking.